All right, this is Pastor Matt, and we are reading The Mortification of Sin by John Owen. We're in the middle of chapter 6. This is the second part of chapter 6 that I'm going to be reading. This chapter 6 is focused on looking at mortifying sin positively. In other words, what does it actually mean? In the first part, we read about habitually weakening it, a very helpful section in this book. This time we're going to be reading about constantly fighting and contending against it. All right, so let's start with that. And let me find my place. There we go. So, number 2, constant fighting and contending against it. A large part of mortification is to always lay heavily into it. When sin is strong and energetic, the soul can hardly make headway against it. It sighs, groans, mourns, and is troubled by sin, but it seldom has it on the run. This is how David speaks of himself. David complains that his sin had taken hold of him so that he could not see. He could barely fight against it. Several things are involved in fighting against sin. Number 1, a man has to know that he has this kind of enemy to deal with. He must recognize it and consider it to be an enemy indeed. It must be destroyed by all means possible. As I said before, the contest is taxing and hazardous. It is about eternal things. When men have indifferent, fleeting thoughts of their lusts, it is not a good sign that they are mortified, nor that they are on their way to mortification. Every man must know the plague of his own heart. Without this knowledge, nothing else can be done. It is frightening to think how many have so little knowledge of the main enemy they carry in their hearts. This ignorance makes them ready to justify themselves, to reject reprimands and warnings because they do not know they are in danger. Very true. Number 2, to begin this warfare, we need to work at learning the ways, deceits, methods, opportunities, and circumstances of sin's success. That is how men deal with their enemies. They assess their enemy's plan of action, examine their motives, and consider how they have won in the past, so that they may prevent their enemy from succeeding again. This is the greatest skill we need to develop. If we take this away, then waging war, through which we've gained our greatest improvements in human wisdom and zeal, would be mindless. This is how those who are successful against lust deal with it. They contemplate it not only when it is actually tormenting, enticing, and seducing them, but in their quieter moments. This is such an important thing. I'm going to underline that because that's such an important aspect of really fighting sin is not just fighting it when you're right in the middle of it, but in those quieter moments, those moments when you're not being plagued by the sin. They consider this is our enemy. This is his path and his progress to date. These are his advantages. This is how we prevailed before, and this is what he will continue to do if not prevented. So David says, my sin is ever before me. Practical spiritual wisdom is finding out the subtleties, policies, and depths of an indwelling sin. We have to consider where its greatest strength comes from, what advantage it has in various circumstances, when it has opportunities, and how it tempts us. What are its pleas, pretenses, and reasons? What are its strategies, emblems, and excuses? A good part of our warfare is to set the wisdom of the Spirit against the craft of the old man, to trace this serpent in all its turnings and windings. It is being able to say, I recognize your old ways. I know what you're after. And so always being ready to deal with it. If anybody has battled sin in their lives, you recognize that sentence. You've probably said some version of that. I recognize your old ways. I know what you're after. And so always ready to deal with it. So we need to recognize those things. His third point here with this part is we need to hinder it daily using all the things below that are painful, deadly, and destructive to it. That is the epitome of this contest. We can never think our lust is dead just because it is quiet. We need to work at giving it new wounds, new blows every day. Those are the apostles' instructions. Kill the parts of your earthly nature. While the soul is in this frame of mind and deals with sin in this way, it has the upper hand. Sin will be under the sword and dying. All right, guys, gals, whoever's listening, I encourage you to pinpoint some of those areas. What are the ploys that your sin and your lust usually take? What are the things that they do? And then let's get to work daily hindering it, finding ways to cut off what it wants and what it wants to thrive and survive. Find out what things work against it. Right. Well, thank you for listening to this episode. This is a little bit shorter than the last one, but tune in for the next one. Next time I'll have the third part of chapter 6, and we'll deal with realizing success over it. And I'm interested in this because I don't know exactly what he means yet. I haven't read it yet. So please share, subscribe, do all those things that people do with podcasts. Alrighty. Thanks for listening.